Hello and welcome to FPL Mate, your best mate for Fantasy Premier League content for the 2023-24 season. My name is Dan, and we are expecting the new FPL season to drop in about a week's time, and there are going to be a couple of changes, one of which will be some players changing positions in all kinds of majestic ways. Some of them are going to be pretty expected, some of them a little more controversial. We will evaluate some of them in this video that I think maybe is a little bit touchy, a little bit on edge. Maybe you guys are going to have some different opinions, but if you do enjoy this video, please do drop a like, do subscribe if you're new around here. But let's have a look at some position changes that are going to be coming to FPL in the new season. Alright guys, first of all, a quick recap on how FPL player positions work. Who is defined as what kind of position, who's going to be the goalkeeper, who's going to be a defender, who's going to be a midfielder, and who is going to be a forward. And different people have different opinions on this one, but this is how it works. So I know some people think that if you are closer to your own goal, you should be a defender, and if you're closer to the opposition's goal, you should be a forward. That is not exactly how it works in FPL, and in fact, it's actually a lot to do with how wide a player is on the pitch as well. So we can see kind of left and right wing-back players kind of actually playing ahead of a lot of those defensive midfielders, but they are still classified as defenders because they are playing in a defensive position, essentially when they are in a kind of a starting kind of position. When we're talking about where their position is in the kind of defensive player, they are going to be classified as a defender. So if you've got a player who is playing as a left or right wing back with a back three formation, then we're still going to see them as a defender, even if it does look like they are quite forward up the pitch. Similar situation with the forwards. You know, if we have players who are wide and playing really, really close to the goal, but they're playing very, very wide as well, it doesn't matter how forward they are. If they are playing wide, then they are still going to be classified as a midfielder. So wingers are still going to be midfielders in FPL. So you can see kind of by this diagram, guys, how this kind of works. And instead of it kind of being divided into 3/3 for defenders, midfielders, and forwards, actually the shapes are a little bit more complicated because we do have to take width into consideration here. You can see that the box around the opposition's box will be forwards. Those wider positions into the central positions around midfield are going to be midfielders, and the wide positions and the very deep positions indeed are going to be your defenders. And goalkeepers, we're probably not expecting too many position changes this season because a goalkeeper is a goalkeeper, right guys? So let's have a look at some of the players who I think are going to change positions for the new season. So our first player is Cody Gakpo, who I think is going to be moving from a midfield position to a forward position. And the way I've been working this out is using the reference from a website called Transfer Marks. I think it's a very, very useful website which kind of gives you a lot of data and information about players. And what we've basically got here is how many times a player has played in each position throughout the Premier League season of last year. And guys, I know that it's not always complete data, because if a player has only played a few minutes as a substitute at the end of the game, then it's not always easily classifiable what position they've actually been playing in their team. But we can see with Cody Gakpo, 16 times he's played in the central forward position, really, really close to goal and really centrally as well, which is going to mean that he is probably going to be moving from a midfielder to a forward. Yes, he's played one game at left wing. Yes, he's actually played one game in centre mid as well, but we do see primarily he is playing in that central forward position, which means that he is very, very likely to be reclassified as a forward. So 16 games, that's really clear. Very, very clear that what we're going to see here. I put some prize predictions and the fixtures on screen as well for you guys, but I do feel like Cody Gakpo, if he is reclassified as a forward, that may actually kind of reduce his appeal in the new season. But there is another player who from Liverpool who I think is going to be more appealing with a new position change, and that is Diogo Jota. So moving from a forward to a midfielder, that's what I think is going to happen here. Yes, we've seen he's played 4 games as a central forward, 1 game as a second striker, so just behind the striker, but still very, very central, which would be a forward classifying position. But he's played far more on the left wing, 12 games in the left wing, so 13 games in total in the midfield positions and 5 games total in the forward positions, which suggests for the new season, from last season's data, there is a real argument to say that he should be moved into the midfield position in FPL, which is going to be very, very nice, particularly if we see a slight reduction in his price. If we have some injuries potentially for Liverpool, we could even see Diogo Jota even playing in that central position, despite the fact that he's now listed as a midfielder, and that could be really advantageous. So Diogo Jota, potentially a player to watch, particularly if there are injuries in the Liverpool front line. So yeah, 1 to watch indeed. Enciso is a player who I think is very, very exciting at Brighton. He looks like he is going to be coming in and being the kind of the main starting attacking midfielder in the absence of McAllister, who has obviously moved to Liverpool. So Enciso could be getting a lot of starting games. I think he is going to be coming in at a pretty cheap price as well, 5 to 6 million. And we know Brighton have some really nice opening fixtures. So if you're looking for that cheap kind of midfielder, I think Enciso could be the guy, because I do think he is going to be a midfielder in the new season, because he's only played 3 games as a central forward. All of his other games, he's been playing in all kinds of other different positions, real varied positions, but what all of these positions have in common is they are all typically classified as midfield spots in FPL. So Enciso was a forward. I think he's going to be a midfielder, and I think he is really a player to watch as well. So keep an eye on this one if he comes in at a nice price. We'll find that out next week, hopefully. Bryan Mbeumo, I know a lot of people think he is going to be a forward. There's a lot of argument, however, to say that he is going to be reclassified as a midfielder. So I know a lot of you guys are starting to think about your FPL teams for the new season. You like the look of Mbeumo in the absence of Tony. He's going to be on penalties. He's going to be one of the main goal threats in this Brentford side. But is he going to be classified as a forward? And I don't know if he is. And if he is classified as a midfielder, that could be even better from him, because he's going to get an extra goal for get extra points for goals. He's going to get an extra point for those clean sheets that Brentford get. And I think that could be actually really quite good. So 8 games as a central forward, 6 games as a second striker, but 22 games as a right winger is enough for me to kind of expect that he will be moving to a midfielder in the new FPL season. So let's see what happens there. I think he's going to be a great pick for your FPL teams from game week 1. Either way, I really like the look of these fixtures. Even that Spurs at home game in the opening fixture, I like the look of that for Mbeumo. Let's see what kind of players that Brentford sign in the summer, whether they try and replace Tony or just kind of wait it out and go with Mbeumo and go with Wissa as well. Let's see what happens there. But if Mbeumo is a midfielder, he could be a really, really nice one if he comes in at the right price. 6 to 7 million, I'm kind of expecting from him. There's a chance he goes a little bit lower, a little bit higher, but probably around the 6.5 million mark we're expecting from him. Lewis Hall, a little bit of an out there shout, really. I know a lot of people won't be picking Lewis Hall in their game week 1 teams, particularly if we've got Chilwell and Cucurella available for Chelsea. But what we saw was Lewis Hall was listed as a 4.5 million midfielder last season, but he has been playing as a left back or a left wing back for Chelsea. 8 games in those left wing back and left back positions, and just 1 game in the left wing position for Lewis Hall, which means it's pretty clear that he does need to be reclassified as a defender. If we do get injuries to Chilwell and Cucurella, and we get a Lewis Hall at a 4 million, for example, maybe 4.5 million, he could actually be genuinely worth a shout. Let's see what happens there. Let's see if there's any injuries or anything like that. But Hall is definitely an upcoming player for Chelsea that could end up being a decent pick if he performs, if he gets his opportunities. He did a little bit last season. Let's see what happens this season. And here's a very controversial one. Richarlison, I think there is genuine argument to say he should be moving to the midfield position. And I'm not 100% sure if this one is going to come off or not, because I think we probably would all agree that Richarlison is a striker. But last season, he was used far more in the wing positions than he was in the central position. So 3 games as a central forward, 1 game as a second striker, and all of the rest of his games, he was playing on the wing, primarily on that right wing. Him and Kulusevski maybe rotating in that position a little bit there, with Son on the left and Kane up front. Now, what is really interesting is that if Richarlison is reclassified as a midfielder, and there's definitely argument to say that this could happen, there is a kind of situation where Harry Kane leaves Tottenham Hotspur and Richarlison is going to be the new central striker for them potentially there. And if that's the case, we're going to have a midfielder who's actually playing as a striker for one of the top teams in England. And if he comes in at a decent price after a pretty poor season last year, then that could actually be pretty good. If he gets game time, if he's playing as a central striker, if he's listed as a midfielder, Richarlison could genuinely come back into the conversation of a top FPL asset that we actually want to own. Controversial, I know, but look, this is definitely possible, and I'm excited to see what actually happens with this one. We could have a real differential on our hands here. The fixtures, they're not too bad really either for Spurs, so hey, maybe one to think about. And here are a bunch of other players that I know you guys are talking about potentially changing positions. I think all of these players have a small chance of having their positions changed for the new season, but I think it is pretty unlikely. And I've kind of justified why on screen with how many games each player has played in the typical defensive positions, the typical midfield positions, and the typical forward positions as defined by FPL. So Marcus Rashford, 19 games kind of playing on the wing, 14 games as a forward. Now, that's still a lot of games as a forward, but the midfield games still outnumber the forward game. So I don't know where Rashford is going to end up playing for Manchester United. Probably going to be going back on the wing, particularly if United are able to sign a new striker. But there is a chance he still gets some game time in the forward position, and we're expecting him to be classified as a midfielder because that's where he played the most games last season. Trent Alexander-Arnold, difficult one, playing as an inverted right back at the end of last season, but Transfer Marks has defined all of his games as playing in defence, playing as a right back. So that's going to be a real tricky one for FPL moving forward, kind of trying to define what is a right back, what is an inverted fullback, what is a inverted central defender. I don't know. This is going to be a really confusing one in terms of where FPL kind of judge these players, because this is a very new concept and maybe some adaptation is going to be needed, but overall, Trent is probably still going to be defined as a defender because for the vast majority of the season, he was pretty much just playing as a straight-up right back. A pretty attacking right back, but a right back nonetheless. Isak played a couple of games on the wing, but primarily a forward there. Pascal Gross played all over the pitch, but the majority of his games were in midfield, so we're expecting him to play in midfield again. Stones, another tricky one, kind of like Trent, but we're probably going to see him as a defender still. Alvarez should stay as a forward, I think. Yeah, this is a tricky one. I know Alvarez has been playing kind of behind the striker at some kind of stages, but maybe that's a second striker. Difficult one, but I expect him to stay the same. Wissa, kind of similar situation in midfield, played most of his games in the midfield positions. A few games as a forward at the end of the season, so maybe we do see him actually play as a striker for Brentford, but at the end of the day, we have to kind of judge FPL positions by where they played most of their games in the previous season or two, and that is indeed on the wing. So we could get an out-of-position striker in Wissa as long as, you know, he's playing in Tony's absence and Brentford don't replace Tony, I guess. It could be a really interesting one. And finally, Brennan Johnson, probably the most controversial one in this video because he has played a lot of games in forward, but it's really close between how many games he's played as a forward and how many games he's played as a midfielder. There's only 2 games in it, and a lot of his games where he's playing further up the pitch, kind of more centrally, were actually towards the beginning of the season. And there's argument to say, towards the end of the season, he was more of a winger. I don't really know for sure where he is going to end up in terms of FPL, but Transfer Market suggests that he's been playing more games as a striker and as a second striker, and therefore he's probably going to remain as a forward in FPL. I don't think FPL will just change positions of a player without a really strong reason to do so, and I don't think there's enough argument for Brennan Johnson to actually be changed position. There's a chance he's a midfielder, but I mean, if we're totally honest, guys, are we really going to be picking too many Nottingham Forest players at the beginning of their season with their fixture run that they have, and you know, a lot of doubt creeping around there? I don't know. Maybe we will, maybe a few, but maybe not necessarily. So yeah, Johnson there as well. And that's pretty much all of the players who I think have a chance of changing positions for the FPL 2023-24 season. Thanks so much for watching, guys. If you did enjoy this one, please do drop a like, do subscribe. If you're new around here, we've got plenty of other off-season content on the channel. If you are just missing FPL and you just want some FPL chat, there's loads of it on my channel, and we're going to be releasing at least one more video before the new season drops as well. Just because, I don't know, I miss FPL, guys. I know a lot of you guys do as well. Working on a lot of stuff as well in the background. We're going to be updating a lot of our graphics. We're going to be trying to try some new stuff as well in the new season. So lots of stuff going on behind the scenes in FPL Mate Industries. I say industries, it's just one person. But there we go, guys. We'll leave it there for now. Thank you so much for watching once again. Hopefully see you on the next video. And until then, I'll see you later, mates. Bye-bye.